As you might have noticed, in 1.1, your economy scales a lot less than it did previously. Now, whether this is a good thing or not is up to you. But what we need to know is the new economic meta and how it's different. So we're going to learn that together. To exemplify the differences, France only has a tax base of 232 in 1354. Previously, they could have north of 1,000, only about 16, 17 years into the game. It's an astronomical difference. And I mean, just look at how low our income is at the moment. But we can improve on this. And by the way, if you recognise this save, this is working on the save that we did the multiplayer on Sunday. If you want to check out the VOD, I'll link it in the top right. So I think the steps we need to take first is to ensure that the groundwork of our economy is safe. What do I mean? Well, having the correct privileges to match our economy and the correct government reforms to give us the biggest boost possible. And getting rid of the Magna Carta has to be one of our priorities. Now, my preferred replacement is this harbour administration government reform, which requires 50 naval, so we need to work quite hard to get up to that level. But once we're there, they can't take it off us. Getting rid of the Magna Carta is so important because our nobles are way too powerful and it deliberately buffs their power. As you can see, we're losing 15% estate satisfaction because of their high power. So if we can get them down to a normal level, we can tax them 15% more, statically, without incurring rebel issues. So we're going to cut our income for a month to reduce the cost of upgrading our cabinet minister to head. And if we let the month tick, we can now promote Sir Miles Stapleton to head of the cabinet for very cheap. We're also going to make our king join a foreign order of chivalry to maximise his bonuses, giving him an additional 15 military skill, and we're going to move our new head of the cabinet over to pushing naval. Ultimately, in capitalism, money breeds more money. So if we can get to a consistent surplus, we can grow our economy. But if we're stuck, middling around zero, we're not going to be able to develop it at all. Luckily, we're in the midst of balance the budget, so we can push our minting up to increase the supply of capital into our market and reduce our inflation at the same time. Also, this cabinet minister is now going to push us above that 50% mark for naval. So we just need to wait and then we can change off the Magna Carta just for 20 stability to that brilliant harbour administration policy. This is so important. As a naval nation, we're going to need to get control over all of these coastlines. So it's so important to maximise these bonuses. I'm also going to release some subjects to reduce our tax-based wealth and maximise our control, as they can get much better control than we can, especially this early on in the game. A little tip for minting, whilst we're in balance of the budget, is that minting is entirely based off your tax base. So if you can get a higher tax base, you'll get more money from your minting. So if you can reduce your inflation while your tax base is lower, and mint higher when your tax base is increasing or getting bigger, you'll make more money in the long run. We're going to cut our army and fort maintenance to maximise that surplus in our economy so we can build buildings faster. So now we've fixed the foundations, what should we prioritise in our early game economy? Well, it's a big dilemma, as we don't have much capital, so we can't just go around spending on everything. But we have some really profitable RGOs that are near our capital, and I think they need to be one of our first priorities, like the horses in Woking, the saffron in Walden, the salt in Canterbury, and the horses in Ipswich. Just ensure you've got free mobility for the common people unlocked, so your population can move around and fill these jobs that you're creating. So now we've finished queuing up some cheap and effective RGOs in places where we have spare workforce. What should we look at next? And I think the next location has to be your capital. At the moment, we do have a bit of an employment shortage, however, so we need to be careful to not overdevelop. But essentially, the reason why you want to focus on your capital is because you've got 100% control there the whole time. You want to build these industries in places where you have high control, so you can receive the rewards of your labour, and I think we've all worked this out by now. So what can we do to increase this proximity? Well, roads are finally useful, as the Black Death is past us. You don't want to make them beforehand, as they deliberately increase that plague spread into rural areas. So if we made a road from London to Saffron Walden, straight away, we'd completely decimate their population with the Black Death. Whereas without a road, they have a chance to just keep that spread down, or avoid the plague entirely. That's why you have these high population little enclaves, because they've been hit by the plague a lot less. We're also going to make some galleys to improve our propagation of maritime presence into these regions. We are gaining at the moment due to our heavy transport fleet, but we need to get this to 100% as fast as possible to increase our control over these naval areas. So we're going to make that road very early on into Saffron Walden and maximise our control there. We've got a bit of a measles epidemic, but there's not really much we can do there. We'll ignore that for now. It's too early on to have too many hospitals. And while we wait for this employment shortage to sort itself out, we're going to continue maximising our proximity. And we can also begin to build bridges to maximise this. They improve that proximity speed, which is so important. You might think proximity speed just increases how fast that proximity goes into the location, so you might think it's a bit useless. But actually, it just reduces that distance modifier. So it is increasing your proximity, and it is increasing your control. And we definitely need to get an early game road into Woking as well. Once again, Woking is horses, and Walden is saffron. So these are two huge economic hubs for England in the early game. So now, while those RGOs are ongoing, we can look at our market. And our market is pretty balanced. We've got no significant deficits, and quite a lot of surplus goods that we should be exporting around the world. So if your market is in a healthy position, you can think about expanding its capacity through marketplaces and market villages to maximise this. So I think this is going to be our next port of call. Spamming out marketplaces to increase our trade income. Even if we have quite low crown power, it will go to our estates and feed back through our economy that way. Now forgive me while I sort out this rebellion issue quite quickly. Nice and easy. And we've accumulated a bit of a war chest while we've been at battle. So what do we want to spend it on now? So we've increased our market capacity, and we could do that as well. But you also have to focus on your internal demand. So I think one of the biggest buildings you can make in the early game is libraries. To create that demand for books, so we can start the book spiral, and paper too. So we're going to make libraries in all of our core cities, and then our next step will be to start the book spiral in London. We're lucky enough to have our next parliament as well. And the develop the interior parliament issue has come up, which is a really good one. But also, we do have to reckon with the promote integration process one too, which could also be really useful for our game plan. However, I think we're going to go for develop the interior to get that urban building cost reduction, to allow us to start this book spiral off nice and early. As you can see with those libraries, we've already got a significant demand for books. So we need to start with scriptoriums as soon as possible. And doing this in your capital is likely going to be your best location. The partial issue in at least Catholic economies is that you can't tax your clergy, so you're not specifically getting the value for the business out of this. But you are making demand off your own population, and you will increase your economic growth through that way, and the goods that spiral into it, so your lumber production, your paper production, and your dye production. So we're going to focus this in areas where we've got high control, not just our capital. And because we're building so much now, we're going to have to increase our tool production to keep up with demand. But I think the tool spiral, in comparison to the book spiral, is very, very different in 1.1. Tools are good in about age 3, because that's when the big demand globally comes in. Whereas the book and paper spiral is much, much better around now in age 2 to make up for that existing demand building that you can make through libraries. Jumping ahead, we're doing another round of RGO building because we finally got the workers for it. And we're very lucky to get the Exceptional Year event, pushing more money into our economy, which we can use to reinvest straight away. So we're also going to embrace professional armies and start going it down it quite early, as we want to get armories and gunsmiths to buff our economy as much as possible and create internal demand. And as we're finally at 50 naval, we can swap that horrific Magna Carta privilege for the brilliant harbour administration one, buffing our proximity across all of our naval regions and increasing the amount of naval governors we can make. And we can end our coalition war quite quickly. As we're struggling with our masonry price at the moment, we can make a few roads at cheaper reductions while we wait for this to fix itself. Or we can repay our debt and get out of it as fast as possible, which is the angle I'm going to take, because that interest, especially at 10%, just eats away at you. So we just need to deal with a little French problem in the meantime, and then we can get back onto the economy building. And we're going to invest in a few more masons to get that price down. Lucky for us, the French want to keep suicide in their armies into our mainland. So we should be able to get a good peace deal with some ducats at the end of this, kick-starting our economy. So we can now peace out the French and get one hell of a lot of money out of it. So where should we spend this war chest? So in the early game, your monetary priority needs to start with your high value RGOs. So let's check which ones we've got available. Universally apply a few. Our people will move around and fill these jobs as soon as possible. After that, we want to look at the book spiral. So we'll queue one hell of a lot of scriptoriums in London, especially now the discount is back and we've got cheap masonry again. We'll do some in Colchester too. And where we've got high control, or where we're aiming to get high control, in Norwich and in Lynn and Boston. Now, for these goods, what we're also going to need is dyes and paper. So we're going to make a few dye makers in London and in our high control areas, and a few more paper makers as well. Subsequently, we're also going to think about proximity. Now, to get proximity into these regions, it's mostly naval. Unfortunately, we haven't got enough naval buildings that we want yet. However, we can increase the inland control specifically. So for Colchester, we can build a road to Bury. For Yarmouth, we can go into Norwich and Thetford. And for Lynn, we can go into Cambridge and Ely when we get the ability to, for a little bit more dosh. But that's a lot of money spent efficiently. Now, we're close to armories now as well, with it only being a few researches away. So how can we prepare for this big source of internal demand? Well, tanneries and weaponsmiths are going to be the big ones here. And by making this demand, we can sell a hell of a lot of things to our own people. We do also want to fix the gaps in our own market, however, as well. And our people are crying out for some more wine, saltpeter, and jewellery. And we're going to continue encouraging migration to London so they can make the most of this economic advantage. Our next parliament is here as well. And we're lucky enough to have the Promote Urbanisation Parliament issue, which will give us pop promotion speed across our entire country, helping to fill these new jobs, but also upgrade Canterbury to a town. So we're going to go for this, and we're going to make sure that it's fulfilled by agreeing to a noble agenda. We also have a few settlements available. These cheap buildings are really efficient for improving our population, which is the most important resource in the entire game. So we're going to get these done while we have the ability to. So now, because we're making a stable income and our economy is in a healthy place, we want to get out of this inflation trap that we used to build this economy. So we're going to reduce our inflation as fast as possible. We can think about minting later down the line. When we've increased this tax base, we got more ROI from it. But for now, because we're building so much, the 20% increase in building costs due to inflation is hurting us a little bit. So let's get rid of this as fast as possible. Once again, we're going to build a bit more of a bigger navy to propagate that maritime presence so we can get control over all of our naval regions. In fact, we're going to split it up so we can start building in the southern coast as well. And we also want to preemptively upgrade our lumber RGOs because we're focusing so much on this book and tool spiral. Likewise, we want to start constructing lumber mills as well, increasing our demand for tools and producing more lumber in our economy. Both are good things for increasing our tax base and our income. We no longer have to be scared of the tool death spiral because that's not in the game anymore. Thank you, Mr. Paradox. So we can go back to using that tool loop to thrive and build an economy. So we're going to start constructing quite a few of them. But don't forget the foundations of your economy too. RGOs are really, really useful and often the best for return on investment. So don't overlook them and keep them upgraded throughout your economic spiral. And we've now just unlocked armories. So I'm sure you're thinking, how does this help us economically? But all of this raw demand is really, really good. And I know armories are expensive, including their upkeep, but oftentimes this can make you more money for your economy yourself. The economic benefit outstrips how much you're spending on those armories. Now, because we're waiting for our economy to go to the next level, we're going to work on our proximity, spelling roads out of our capital, increasing our control nationally, and thinking about where we make our new governor buildings. You need cities to utilise governors, so it's a sound investment and a lot of it, so we'd have to save it for quite some time. But the amount of proximity they give makes it absolutely worth it. And we're now going to expand our tool industry, starting that tool spiral because we've increased our demand for lumber. At the same time as expanding key RGOs, we've got a good surplus now, so we can expand all sides of our economy at the same time. We're not stuck to one spiral. We can increase our books, we can increase the demand for tools, make armories to increase our domestic demand, and create a big, wide economy ready to stand the test of time. So our war reparations with France have now run out, so we can now see how our economy is doing, only about 15 years since we started looking at it. And we've doubled our tax base yet again. We're making a consistent surplus without the need to mint, and if we do start minting, we can make one hell of a lot of money. And our armory spiral and tool spiral is just kicking off, so we can expect exponential growth from here on out, and we're ready to go and expand, annex our subjects, create a naval proximity nation to stand the test of time, create our local governors to get proximity over these regions, and go and dominate the rest of the world. If you learned something, please consider subscribing, it's really appreciated, and have a great day. And if you want to find out more about the specific inflation minting dilemma, watch the video on screen now.